first overall to have a winning record in his first season was Andrew Luck in 2012. Just for perspective there. Now, from this year's rookie class to Michael Penix Jr., who enters year 2 as the projected starter in Atlanta, the Falcons were relatively quiet this offseason, especially in terms of offense. Falcons had 2 first-round picks and used them both on edge rushers. Their only draft pick on offense was a 7th-round offensive tackle. They also added Leonard Floyd and Divine Diablo. Atlanta does have some potential big pieces on offense, of course, with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. J-Mac, how important will all of this offseason, though, be for Michael Penix?
Oh, it'd be huge. You think about it, for him last year, you get drafted 8th overall, and around this time, we were all reacting to the fact that they had paid Kirk Cousins all of this money. What the hell were they going to do with Michael Penix Jr.? And now a year later, it is his team. He is going into the offseason as quarterback number 1. So I think the chemistry that he develops and he continues to build with a guy like Drake London, who ended the season last year with a monster game. For Falcons fans, you got a chance to see Michael Penix Jr. in some of the biggest moments going on primetime head-to-head with the Jayden Daniels and showing that he has that it factor when they need him most to come through. So now, knowing that the team is yours, how much can you get those guys to buy in throughout the entire offseason that you are the guy to lead the way? Because in this division, other than Baker Mayfield, he should be maybe the second-best quarterback.
I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball and what they did in the draft. First of all, the linebacker name that's Divine Diablo, I hope he's good, Boogie, so we can say his name all season long.
It was rolling off the tongue.
Jesus, like, mom and daddy were rolling the night they was deciding that name.
That's a great name,
but I like I like what they did, man, because, look, the other side of the ball helps quarterbacks tremendously as well, and we don't get into it enough, but they bolstered their pass rush with their 2 first picks in Pierce and Walker. And you think about the things that happened in Atlanta for so long, and when I say so long, last 5 years, we've been talking about their pass rush. Can they get after the quarterback? What that leads to is favorable field position for young quarterbacks. You get off the field so they get more opportunities throughout the duration of a game. The game is played in possessions. J-Mac knows that as well. Like, a lot of people, when we're in the game as defenders, a lot of people focus on the score. We focus on how many times we can get our offense the ball back, which determines if those guys can come back. That's the way we think about it. So I love what they did by bolstering the pass rush. Raheem Morris, obviously, being a defensive guy, address the need that the Atlanta Falcons did, but this could tremendously help Penix with getting him more opportunities throughout the game and possibly favorable field position.
You know, I think you're just being a good teammate, because I made a bad mistake the last block where I said Andrew Van Ginkel was an offensive weapon for J.J. McCarthy when he's clearly on the defense. But I was thinking the same thing, Swagoo. Listen, the defense helps the offense.
There you go.
Right? You're bailing me out here.
It does.
You know what? Listen, though, in all seriousness.
And we human.
I wanted to correct the record there, because that's a bad mistake for me. All right, the other big thing hanging over the organization of the Atlanta Falcons is the future
he got $23 million.
Kirk Cousins. Good point.
He's straight.
The Falcons GM Terry Fontenot was asked if a trade was still a possibility for Cousins this offseason.
We're always patient with those types of things, because if something comes to us with Kirk or any other player that makes sense and it's going to help this team, then we're going to be aggressive and we're going to do it. And if it's not something that's going to ultimately help this team, we always have to ask that question. Is it the best for the Atlanta Falcons, for this organization? And if it is, we're going to be willing to do it. But all that communication is always ongoing.
All right, so Adam, with Penix the likely starter, what does it mean for the future of Kirk Cousins?
Well, his options are drying up. Essentially, the Cleveland Browns, who I don't think ever were real players for Kirk Cousins, drafted 2 rookie quarterbacks this past weekend. The Minnesota Vikings traded for veteran quarterback Sam Howell. The Pittsburgh Steelers are still waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Now, if Aaron Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, as many people expect will be the case, there is not a landing spot currently for Kirk Cousins. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to Pittsburgh and decides not to play football for some reason, then the Steelers, I would think, would explore a deal for Kirk Cousins. But if Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, there's no landing spot, and we'd have to wait to see if and which team might develop a quarterback issue, situation, injury, before there could be any movement from Kirk Cousins from Atlanta. Otherwise, he'll be with the Falcons.
And I think that's the best case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons and for Michael Penix Jr. Listen, it's going to be a distraction outside of the locker room. When the media enters, they're going to continue to ask Kirk Cousins how he feels being a backup. They're going to ask Michael Penix Jr. what's it like in the quarterback, knowing that Kirk Cousins wants to be the guy. But I think once they're insulated and they're in that quarterback room, Michael Penix Jr. gets to have Kirk Cousins in his ear. And the fact that I believe that's going to happen is he is there at off-season workouts, which is completely optional and voluntary. He doesn't have to be there, and he's choosing to do so. That's who Kirk Cousins is at his core. And like Adam said, at some point during the season, it might make sense to trade him. But Kirk Cousins also has a no-trade clause, and his family is something that's very important to him. So moving in the middle of a season is another factor as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a bunch of factors playing, but the number one factor is that damn 3-year, $117.5 million I'm looking at on that graphic right there. That's what I'm looking at. I wouldn't be mad either. Leave my ass in Atlanta too, okay? As long as you're going to pay me, and I'll be here to back up Michael Penix if it don't go well. And Kirk Cousins is a veteran, man. He understands the way that this business works. He knows that he could eventually end up in Atlanta or could be traded if a team shows enough interest and become that quarterback needed as we go forward. The season is long, all season is long. Kirk is staying put in Atlanta until somebody finds themselves in a quarterback conundrum.
You know, I was on the Raiders-Falcons sideline for the game before Kirk Cousins ended up losing the job to Penix. It was interesting watching the two quarterbacks throughout the game. They really were spending a lot of time together. Cousins was offering up a lot of help and instruction about what was going on. So to J-Mac's point, that could be a very real thing. All right, coming up next, we're getting into Caleb Williams. Okay, he will be playing in the league of second-year quarterbacks. Fresh off his appearance in the NFC Championship his rookie season, we turn our attention to Jayden Daniels in Washington. The Commanders made some big moves this offseason. They traded for Deebo Samuel, which gives Jayden Daniels another weapon alongside Terry McLaurin. In an effort to protect Daniels, they acquired Laramie Tunsil from the Texans and drafted tackle Josh Connerly Jr. in the first round. On defense, they used their second-round pick on corner Trey Amos, and their biggest signing on that side was Javon Kinlaw. Of course, a lot of big names they've added. I'm excited to see how that all comes together. Marcus, defensive coordinators have had a whole offseason, right, to watch the tape on Jayden Daniels, to plan for next season. We know about that adjustment period that sometimes happens, but if you were in those meetings, what would your focus be?
First, my focus would be, how in the hell are we supposed to stop him when you can't play with 13 people? That would be my first question. The second one I would ask is, how do we want to make Jayden Daniels play? And I think you implement what teams tried to do to Lamar, and then Lamar started taking advantage of keep him in the pocket. And I know it sounds simple, because the back-breaking plays